ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Port Novo. Good afternoon, and thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on wadr.org. This is Newslink. Here are the top stories. Expert reaction trails International Monetary Fund's latest statement on Senegal's public debt ratio.
To
reduce debt while maintaining growth, the government must adopt a balanced approach between fiscal austerity and economic stimulation.
The UN Human Rights Commission frowns at prolonged detention of peace activists and dissident opposition members in Mali. The Nigerian army decorates Abdurrahman Chani as a full general and takes an oath of office as transitional president. Progressive peace returns to Nigeria's northeast Borno state following a decade of insurgency.
So it has been a collaborative effort that has been put in place for so many years, and it has resulted to the celebrated peace that we've recorded so far in Borno entirely.
Details of these stories and more coming up shortly.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners in Ghana, the Gambia, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Newslink begins in Senegal, where there are reactions to the International Monetary Fund's demand for reforms before it grants any new financial support to the Senegalese government. The IMF confirmed the findings of the Court of Auditors report on Senegal's public finance management over the past 5 years. However, it has raised serious concerns about hidden debt estimated at 4 trillion CFA francs. The Bretton Woods institution states that the debt remains sustainable but urges the Senegalese government to implement corrective measures. Augustine Kole has more.
According to the IMF, this deliberately hidden amount sums up to approximately $7 billion, or 25% of the country's GDP. Eddie Jumail, head of the International Monetary Fund mission, said the hidden debt has allowed the Senegalese authorities to borrow more on the markets, to send a more positive signal to the financial markets, and also to borrow at more favorable rates than those rates would have been if the debt were higher. However, Jumail insisted on the need to take corrective measures regarding false information on the debt before any release of IMF funds to Senegal. Reacting to the IMF latest statement, Senegalese economist Fallou Ba says,
To reduce debt while maintaining growth, the government must adopt a balanced approach between fiscal austerity and economic stimulation. It is truly essential to reduce the deficit. Also, try to improve tax collection and increase state revenue without increasing the tax burden on businesses and households. It will still be necessary to invest in productive sectors such as agriculture and industry so that the country can generate more wealth and truly gradually reduce its debt. A downward trajectory of debt is possible, but strict fiscal discipline and, of course, well thought out strategic choices are still necessary.
The IMF has suspended its existing $1.8 billion credit facility to Senegal pending a review of state finances, which confirmed last month that the debt and budget deficit were much wider than former President Macky Sall's administration had reported. The Court of Auditors report indicates that at the end of 2023, the total outstanding debt represented 99.67% of gross domestic product compared with a previously recorded figure of 74.41%. However, the IMF will have to decide in May this year whether Senegal will obtain a waiver or whether the international institution will ask Dakar to repay what it had rather lent before resuming a new program.
Augustine Kohler reporting. Meanwhile, civil society organizations in West Africa are currently meeting in the Senegalese capital, Dakar, to explore the decline in democracy and civic space across the sub-region. Key among the discussions include the increase in coups and the authoritarian regimes in the region. The workshop, organized by the West African Civil Society Institute, WACSI, under Civic Space Resources Hub, aims to deepen understanding of the shrinking civic space in the sub-region, strengthen collaboration between social movements and civil society organizations, and develop actionable strategies to protect civic freedoms, restore democratic values, and build resilience. The head of policy, influencing and advocacy at WAXI, Omolara Balogun, joins us in the second half of the news. In Mali, the United Nations experts have raised concerns about the prolonged detention of members of the Mali Peace Movement and the Saudi opposition party. The individuals affected are Moulay Baba Haidara, Mahmoud Mohamed Mangani, and Amadou Togola. They were arrested in 2023 for opposing the draft constitution at the time. The UN reported that the three men have been subjected to torture and have called for their immediate release. Tisu reports.
In a statement released Monday, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights demanded the immediate and unconditional release of the three political activists. Experts from the UN organization indicated that Moulay Baba Haidara, Mahmoud Mohamed Mangani, and Amadou Togola were subjected to acts of torture. Experts in arbitrary detention and violations of fundamental freedoms have reported that the three men detained in secret locations were subjected to flogging, scarification, and even electrocution. They are therefore calling on the Malian authorities to release them for medical treatment. In 2023, these political leaders had called for a mobilization against the draft constitution initiated by the transitional authorities, which was finally adopted by referendum and promulgated in July of the same year. On October 29, 2024, the African Court of Human Rights requested Mali to release the three detainees so that they could receive specialized care. 2 days later, the Malian investigating judge in charge of their cases also ordered their release. 6 months later, the three activists remain in prison.
A report filed in by Tisu. Elsewhere in Niamey, Brigadier General Abdurrahman Chani was elevated this Wednesday, March 26, 2025, to the rank of Army General and officially invested President of the Republic of Niger. This was at a solemn ceremony marking the official launch of the implementation of the resolutions and recommendations of the recently held National Conference. Chani was also decorated Grand Master of the National Orders of Niger, a symbol of recognition for his commitment to the nation. Away from the Sahel, reactions are trailing the publication of a report on the terrorist threat in Benin's northern region. The report, titled Terrorism in Northern Benin, Avoiding Security Crisis in Banekora, was initiated by the Timbuktu Institute. The research center emphasizes the declining security situation in the Bakura commune, which is located in northern Benin. In contrast to the findings of the report, the military leadership in Benin asserts that the situation is under control. Imoradet tells us more.
The Timbuktu Institute report highlights a worrying development in the terrorist phenomenon in Banekora. Numerous testimonies collected by researchers at the African Peace Research Center attest that armed groups are no longer content with sporadic raids. They are now invading the social fabric, insidiously approaching the population. Immediately after the publication of this information, the Beninese army reacted. Colonel Feizu Gumina is the Chief of Staff of the National Guard and Head of Operation Mirador.
The phenomenon is under control, but that does not mean it is completely defeated. There can be infiltrations. There can still be blows that are dealt. However, it remains that we are making every effort to ensure the security of this area and to prevent the threat from reaching the city centers.
In the end, the Timbuktu Institute made recommendations to the Beninese government to end terrorism. Other observers closely monitoring the security situation in Benin also made proposals to stem the terrorist threat. Dr. Abdelaziz Mosi is a lecturer and researcher at the University of Parakou and specialist in criminal economics, radicalization, and violent extremism.
I think
that providing aid in a one-off manner is not necessarily the solution, because the actions that underpin the territory in this area are deep-rooted reasons related to issues of social justice, governance, and citizens' participation and collective action.
Finally, in its report, the Timbuktu Institute calls on Beninese authorities to restore trust between the state, security forces, and the population. The document also recommends that Beninese authorities stimulate the economy to prevent youth from becoming vulnerable to non-state armed groups.
Imoredet voiced that report filed in by WADR's Cotonou correspondent Aziz Adamsule.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
As a reminder, we're live on wadr.org and on YouTube and Facebook. Let's take you to Ghana, where a crucial constitutional process began yesterday following the submission of 3 petitions seeking the removal of the country's Chief Justice, Gertrude Sake Tokono. In response, President John Mahama has initiated consultations with the Council of State, a move that could have far-reaching implications for the country's judiciary. From Accra, Nadiri Tete reports.
President John Dramani Mahama has begun consultations with the Council of State after receiving 3 petitions calling for the removal of the Chief Justice Gertrude Araba Isaba Tokono. According to a statement from the Minister for Government Communications, Felix Kwache Ofosu, the petitions have been duly forwarded in accordance with Article 146 of the 1992 Constitution, which outlines the process for the removal of judges and a Chief Justice. While details of the petitions remain undisclosed, this development sets in motion a constitutional process that could significantly impact the judiciary. The Council of State is expected to review the petitions and provide counsel to the President on the appropriate course of action. This is not the first time Chief Justice Gertrude Tokono has faced such a challenge. In January, former President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo dismissed a similar petition filed by Professor Stephen Kwaku Asare, which alleged misconduct and constitutional breaches. After a review process, it was determined that the petition lacked merit and did not warrant further action. Under Article 146 of the 1992 Constitution, a Justice of the Superior Court or a chairman of a regional tribunal may only be removed from office on grounds of stated misconduct, incompetence, or an inability to fulfill their duties due to physical or mental incapacity. For WDR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
Security authorities in Borno State, northeastern Nigeria, say that sustained cooperation among multiple agencies has significantly weakened the terrorist groups operating in the region. The state has faced over a decade of insurgency. The police public relations officer for Borno State Command, Assistant Superintendent of Police Nahum Dasu Kenneth, informed WADR's Usman Umar that this coordinated effort has greatly contributed to the progressive peace currently being experienced in the state. Take a listen.
It is indeed no doubt that the Boko Haram insurgency activities had happened here for over a decade, like you likely mentioned. In the previous years, we used to have so many attacks by these insurgents. But currently, what we have from the security situation here in Borno State is that with concerted efforts of all joint security agencies, we'll be able to reduce the capacity of Boko Haram to have any coordinated attack. Back then in the past, in previous years, it used to be bombs, adoption, rape, sexual gender-based violence, and so many other violences that are happening in the states, which are part of the antics of these insurgents to create fear, panic, tension for the people of the state. But celebratedly, I would say in recent times, we've recorded successes where the Borno State's model, where it gave a veritable ground for insurgents to surrender their arms and embrace peace, which they'll be provided with certain skills that will help them to reintegrate back to society. So it has been a collaborative effort that has been put in place for so many years, and it has resulted to the celebrated peace that we've recorded so far in Borno entirely.
Now, while ASP Nahum Dasu Kenneth, Police Public Relations Officer for Borno State Command, Northeast Nigeria, confirms progressive peace in the region, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) says it has received the petition to recall Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, but said it did not meet the requirements for the action. The Independent National Electoral Commission's National Commissioner and Information and Voter Education Chairman Sam Olumekun disclosed in a statement on Tuesday. Olumekun said the petition from Kogi Central Senatorial District was accompanied by 6 bags of documents which contained signatures from over half of the 474,000 registered voters spread across 902 polling units in 57 registration areas. However, the Electoral Commissioner said the agency noticed some missing pieces in the petition, adding that once the petition meets the requirements of submission as contained in its regulations, the Commission shall commence the verification of the signatures in each polling unit in an open process restricted to registered voters that signed the petition only. The push to recall Senator Natasha came just after she was suspended by the Senate for violating its rules. She had accused Senate President Godswill Akpabio of sexual assault. The Armed Forces of Liberia is currently conducting a military patrol across the country's borders amid ongoing political activities in neighboring Guinea and Cote d'Ivoire. Now, Liberia is bordered by Guinea to the north, with the Guinea-Liberia border running from the tri-point with Sierra Leone in the western region to the tri-point with Cote d'Ivoire in the east. Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Taplai is the public relations officer of the Liberian Armed Forces.
From all indications, we don't have anything like a threat from elections that will be held in Guinea or in Ivory Coast. But like I said, to ensure the safety of our people, we conduct operations routinely. We will cover all of our border areas. All of our border areas will be patrolled. So the operation is on. The operation has nothing to do with elections in Guinea or in Ivory Coast or in Sierra Leone. The operation is just intended to patrol our borders as well as our interiors. And it is basically to conduct patrols against transnational crimes, like for instance, drug trafficking, against illegal mining in our country, in Liberia. It's also about confidence building. You know, the security of the state is in the hands of the AFL and other paramilitary entities. We are constantly renovating our barracks, and very soon you will see our troops deployed across the country at border areas and so forth.
Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Taplai is a public relations officer of the Liberian Armed Forces. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Expert reaction trails International Monetary Fund's latest statement on Senegal's public debt ratio. The UN Human Rights Commission frowns at prolonged detention of peace activists and decided opposition members in Mali. The Nigerian army decorates Abdurrahman Chani as a full general and takes an oath of office as transitional president. Progressive peace returns to Nigeria's northeast Borno state following a decade of insurgency. And in the news, we have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Thank you for staying with us. In Cote d'Ivoire, education sector unions are threatening to strike on April 3 and 4, 2025. They are demanding an incentive bonus for education and training sector staff and respect for trade union freedoms. This latest announcement follows in the union's previous protest in October 2024 and a series of engagements with relevant stakeholders. Christopher Tichu has the details.
The affected stakeholders include trade unions from the Ministries of National Education and Literacy, as well as technical education and vocational training. Gathering under the inter-union body of the two ministries, these union members have taken to the streets to protest the violation of trade union freedoms. The announced strike aims to compel the authorities to take concrete action on granting an incentive bonus for workers in the sector. The protesters have stated that they were reassured by the authorities authorities following their previous strike on October 2024. A committee was established during that time and is expected to deliver its findings on February 27. However, according to the union members, this committee has not convened a single meeting since its inception. They have even requested the Prime Minister's intervention in writing, but this request is yet to receive a response. Union members have threatened to abandon their post on April 3 and 4 to demand their rights. As a reminder, in October 2024, teacher unions in Côte d'Ivoire representing preschool, elementary, middle and secondary education went on a 3-day strike demanding salary increases, particularly quarterly bonuses. They also protested against the unconstructive and unproductive dialogue between the unions and the public authorities over the past 2 years.
Christopher Ticho with that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Samkule Janko is standing by with today's press review, bringing you a summary of major headlines on the front pages of the Gambian dailies.
Let's go straight to the stories making headlines in the Gambia. Interestingly, one particular story dominates all the headlines Gambian dailies today, and that is the diaspora voting, because there was a debate in the National Assembly regarding the diaspora voting. Of course, if you could recall, clause 14 of the election bill was deleted by National Assembly members, and it has caused an uproar among Gambians, and the consideration on that particular bill continued yesterday. And because of this, all eyes were on parliamentarians. So let's begin with the Standard newspaper's headline, for example, for today. And their lead story reads, AG spells out options for diaspora voting. AG, of course, that's Attorney General and Minister of Justice Dauda A. Jallow. According to the Standard newspaper, when Dauda appeared before lawmakers while they were considering the elections bill, the issue of clause 14 was mentioned again. And when this happened, the Justice Minister and Attorney General gave National Assembly members 2 options that he said are available that will propel for Gambians in diaspora to register as well as vote. And they, according to the minister, include, one of them is to allow Gambians in the diaspora to register under their constituencies back home in the Gambia, or the other option is for National Assembly members to amend Section 88 of the Constitution of the Gambia, which provides the demarcation of Gambian constituencies. By amending that section means there will be an additional constituency which will provide Gambians in the diaspora to vote. Now let's take a look at the Fourier. The Fourier newspaper's lead story also is about events that happen in Parliament, and it reads, Gambia's Parliament debates bill to let diaspora vote. That's the lead story. But there is another one, a different story, but still related to events in the National Assembly yesterday, and it reads, lawmakers block move to reinstate diaspora voting, because there were attempts among parliamentarians who thought it wise, to reinstate clause 14, which was deleted. But according to other members of the National Assembly, that could not be done as per Assembly rules. Now let's take a look at the Point newspaper, and the lead story on the Point newspaper also reads, NAMS clash over diaspora voting rights again. All eyes were on National Assembly members yesterday, and then the Point newspaper, just like the Fourier as well as the Standard, also make these events in Parliament as their lead story. The only newspaper that did not publish the events in National Assembly as the lead story is the Voice newspaper. And the Voice newspaper's lead story today reads, survey reveals corruption at Presidency, National Assembly. These are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies. It's back to you.
Sankule Janko there with the press review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Our guest is the head of advocacy and policy at WAXI, Omolara Balogun. Speaking to WADR, Balogun explains the importance of an ongoing meeting of civil society organizations in West Africa here in Dakar over the declining democracy practices and shrinking civic space across the region. The workshop, organized by the West African Civil Society Institute WAXI under Civic Space Resource Hub, aims to deepen understanding of the shrinking civic space in the sub-region, strengthen collaboration between social movements and CSOs. Here is more with Omolara Balogun.
So it's really important for the Sahelian country to learn. I mean, we understand that the contexts are quite different, but, civil society working in restricted spaces under military rule is not something that is unfamiliar to us in West Africa. So bringing colleagues, bringing civil society, human rights defenders, activists who have lived those lives before and maneuvered through it and survived it together to share with their colleagues from the Sahel, it's really going to be a great opportunity for cross-fertilization of ideas, for sharing of experiences, and also learning of some new skills, particularly how to utilize legal framework, legal tools, to protect yourself or to even fight the state when some of these injustices happen.
What are the targeted goals and, of course, the expected outcomes from this meeting?
So we have three main objectives for this meeting. The first is to create a space for every one of us to share. Sharing experiences from Ghana to Nigeria, NSAS to Yenemar, Senegal to Belusitaye in Burkina Faso and the likes, and also to hear feedback from colleagues who are currently working under authoritarian rules, working under democratic system that is sick and weak is different from working outrightly in military regime, the realities on the ground and how civil society are faring on the ground and the kind of support that they require. The second objective is how we can facilitate better collaboration between the organized civil society and the organic. By organized, we mean the NGOs as you have it, those who are working on social justice, those who are working on legal reform, those who are working on human rights issues. How do we better collaborate with social movements that are loosely formed, that have less structured and all of that? How do we ensure that the causes of social movement are carried on by NGOs that have, ideas and skills to maneuver through processes, systems, institutions of government? So how can we facilitate connections between them? How can we solidify ties? How can we build, a synergy that would last and, yield the impact that we all crave? And the final one is for us to come up with strategies on which, in terms of capacity development, what kind of capacities do we need within this context? As social movement, what capacity do we require? And how an organization like WACSI, who is focused on civil society capacity development, can develop a curriculum that meets the needs of social movement and organic actors.
Omolara Balogun is the head of policy and advocacy at WACSI. In the world of sports, Senegal bounced back from their disappointing goalless draw with Sudan to convincing 2-0 win against Togo on Tuesday night at the Abdoulaye Wade Stadium in Diamniadio. The win has propelled the Teranga Lions to second on the table with 12 points behind DRC at the summit with 13 points. Leaders DRC defeated Mauritania 2-0. It was the contrast for the Super Eagles of Nigeria as their hopes were dented by a late equalizer from Zimbabwe at home in the Group C encounter. Bafana strengthened their grip on Group C with a composed 2-0 away win in Benin. The draw placed Nigeria fourth on the table with 7 points and 6 points behind leaders South Africa with 13 points. This means Nigeria must win their remaining 4 matches and hope that South Africa slips along the way. And with that, we wrap up this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek, Mamko Rufai, and Sheikh Njai for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR English, on Facebook, WADR English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is a replay of our flagship gender program, 50-50 with Nadir Tete. And at the top of the hour of 1 p.m., is second edition of our comprehensive news package in French, Info Chez Vous, with Mustafa Jakite. I'm Abdullah Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0.